Cool. Hey guys, I don't really post videos like this very often, but I want to just start being a little bit more real with the channel and stuff, and just kind of treat it as like almost like a log or a diary, because I have trouble writing my thoughts out. But I've been really going through it. I feel like talking to the camera, like it's another person kind of helps, but on the 10th I lost my uncle, who I wasn't too fond of up until like kind of recently when we opened up more to each other. Gosh, I'm gonna be crying a lot in this video. I don't even know if I want to upload it because it being so vulnerable, and it's to just random strangers, but I don't care. But a few weeks ago, maybe more, I learned that my Uncle Mark had been in the hospital. He didn't really want to tell me or many other of the family because he didn't want to worry anyone. I found out through his mom. She called me, told me the situation, and I started visiting him. I remember getting there at first, and I broke down crying because I just saw him in the hospital bed, and I was just like, damn, this is serious. We hadn't really known what was really going on, I don't think, but we knew he had colon cancer. I don't know too much about the logistics of everything, but from what my friend had told me, colon cancer is one of the... It's like less serious and it's like easier to cure. It's still cancer and it sucks. But I found that out. And that I think they had found other places of cancer just like on top of his lungs, and his tummy was swelling up. Like, he kept saying it was like 3rd trimester or even bigger, because it was pretty big, and it had been like that for a good while, and it was just starting to get worse. I don't remember exactly what that was. I have ADHD, like severe ADHD, I've just found out, and that makes it hard to like retain information. Well, I struggled in school, it was really bad, but there was a fluid buildup in his tummy. I think it was unrelated to the cancer, I don't know for sure, but I think he was put on liquids and soft foods, or I don't even know if soft foods at that point, maybe drinks and stuff, and the nurses were taking care of him and all was fine. We thought, like, I mean, it wasn't fine, but we thought like he'd make it out of that. Jump like halfway in, we were kind of opening up to each other more and more, and we talked about stuff in my childhood and stuff, and came to a lot of realizations about how, I don't know, there were times where I didn't fully tell the truth because I didn't feel comfortable telling the truth, due to my family dynamic sort of thing. And it was just nice to kind of open up and learn stuff about him and I don't know. I started feeling good, and I felt like I had more of a connection with him, which I feel like it took too long because he was already in the hospital and things were getting serious. I remember the nurses were working really hard to take care of him and stuff, and they said that he was one of the nicest patients they had ever had, which I believed because he was a great person. He touched a lot of people's hearts. And I wasn't visiting too often because I was like, well, I was trying to visit as often as I could, but I had a lot of stuff going on at home and hangout times and just trying to get rent settled since I'm self-employed and very much struggling in my current housing situation. I'm getting kicked out by the end of the month. It's kind of not great. I have to move back to my hometown, which I'm not too happy about because I'm going to lose a lot of friends. I remember opening up to him about that and just being like worried about my financial situation and just like about my housing, but I didn't want to stress him out too much, so I tried to keep it on the low, but I could tell he was still really worried about me. And he kept saying like, or at one point I think his mom came in and like we were kind of making a plan to maybe have me move in with his mom, and I was like kind of on board because it would have been free rent, which I could have really used, and I'd be taking care of her, making her food, like going grocery shopping and stuff and all that, and yeah, free rent. I felt happy because that meant I could probably get into college. And I've like struggled with schooling all my life. I failed through school. Not even a 1.0 GPA. It was really bad. I haven't even gotten my GED yet. It's not great. But I just thought that might be like an opportunity to get back on my feet. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll try that out. And so after a few days went by, I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll stay with her for a week. And so day one was okay. It felt a little weird, but towards the end of the day I was talking with her, and it was really weird. At one point, she was telling me that I needed to meet her where she was at financially, which I wasn't sure what meant. She was telling me I needed to get a job, like, I don't know, pushing carts or something, and I was kind of confused because that wasn't the initial plan, and I thought that meant, I thought, like, moving in would mean I would have free time to just kind of like figure stuff out life-wise. I had asked her if like it would be possible to move my desk setup in the bedroom, and she wasn't too keen of that either. And so I was kind of bummed out. Well, more bummed out than normal. At one point I went into the bedroom and looked around. It was just like a queen-sized mattress, and then like just really old paintings and stuff. It's old-fashioned, but I just started thinking like she doesn't like change. And like I wouldn't really have freedom of expression, I felt like, which just really blue. I wouldn't be able to put my desk up, and she said I had to put that off in the living room, and I just felt like I didn't have the privacy that I need as a 21-year-old. And so that sucked. I went out and tried to talk to her a little bit more, but she was pretty set and done on that whole thing. I asked if I would be able to, like, switch out the mattress and have my own, like, twin-size mattress, because I have one, and it's really comfortable, and it's to my needs, and... Sorry. She said no. She wanted to keep that room how it was. I went on a walk. Was crying, talking to my friend, just telling them the whole situation. Went back to the place. Went to the bedroom, was about to go to bed, and then I just started crying. And as I was crying, I got a phone call. And it was Mark, my uncle. And he was like, God. He said, "Hi, Bubba, how's it going?" And I said, "I'm fine." Well, I'm not fine. I'm actually crying at the moment. And then he was like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really happy I called then." And he was like, "What's wrong?" And I told him what was up. I said, I just was kind of bummed out that it didn't look like, or it didn't seem like what I had hoped it might have been. And I told him about all, like, how I wouldn't be able to have my computer in the room and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'll be out of here soon." And she just needs a little talking to, and I'll be able to talk with her, and you'll be able to have the room exactly how you want it. You'll be able to express yourself. And it was really sweet, and it eased a lot of my frustrations and thoughts, and we talked for a little longer, and said we loved each other, and hung up. I felt better. Next day rolls by. We got to the hospital, talked with Mark, and he was seeming a little better. His stomach had just been cleared, the fluid out of it was, like, gone, but it was still coming back a little bit. Yeah, the day was good. We went back home. Had a normal day for the most part. I think like 2 more days go by, and I hear from Mark's mom that Mark didn't sound like he was doing too well. I guess there were just ups and downs during the whole period, and it was very worrying. And I don't know, there were a lot of feelings. I'm really bad at recollecting stuff, but eventually I went home after everything. There was a point where I think I was doing my own thing, and I remember I was just back at home after all of that, and I got a call from and she said that Mark's not doing well. and that he may have hours, or he may die tomorrow, is what she said. And so I was like, okay, I'll come by. And she was like, well, don't come by now. I need some time with him. And I was like, well, the bus takes like an hour to get there. And she was like, oh, well, that's fine, but I would prefer if we had some time alone. And I was pretty upset by that, but I said okay. He did fucking raise me, but okay. I didn't say that. But he was basically my dad throughout my entire life. And she was telling me not to come see him. I don't know. I understand, like, one-to-one time is important, but to say, like, oh, he might have, like, a few hours tomorrow to live, and then just be like, oh, don't come now, just really irked me the wrong way. I started leaving with my friend. We stayed at the hospital for a little while. People were coming in and out, just friends and cousins of Mark's. And he was talking and stuff. He couldn't talk very well because there was fluid filling his lungs. And I had my best friend there with me for a while, and they had work the next day, so they had to go home. Then eventually people started leaving. I was staying there with Mark, and I asked him if he wanted me to spend the night there, and he said, no, I want you to go home. I don't want you to have to sleep in this hospital. And I was like, are you sure? I will. I would love to. And he was like, no. I would much prefer if you went home. And I was like, okay. I had my friend who was in another city come by, because I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to be living with you for a little while. You can come by, say hi if you want. And then I can go with you home. And they had finally arrived. And we didn't really talk much. Mark couldn't talk much because his lungs were filling with fluid, and I think from the cancer. I told Mark I loved him, and he said he loved me too. One point he offered to pay my friend, and I just told him he didn't have to do that, and that it would be okay. Went home with my friend, started crying again, lots of tears. Like a day had gone by, and I was just hanging out with that friend and another friend from my childhood. And I was like not too worried about Mark, because I was like, oh, he'll be fine. I don't know why I thought that, but I just assumed he'd be okay. I don't know why. I also had it in my brain that, like, oh, he was gonna stay with us. Like, it almost felt like, well, the nurses know what they're doing, like, he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll make it out of the hospital still, because I hadn't heard anything extra. I went back to the hospital more towards the night. It was like maybe 5 o'clock, 6. My dad was there. My dad said he was going to spend the night. I was talking with him, and he was saying that Mark couldn't communicate, and he was almost, I guess like the nurses couldn't say he was in a coma, but it was likely that he might have been. I guess they legally couldn't say that. But he knew, or they said that he was aware of his surroundings and he knew who was in the room. And I was with my dad and I was with Mark, and my dad was taking care of him, cleaning him up. I guess the nurses hadn't been like doing a good job doing that and like cleaning him. My dad said like there had been a few times where he had been like combing his hair and stuff, and Mark would like look at him, and he was like tucking him in with blankets and stuff, and he had this teddy bear with him. At one point, I don't know, I still had in my mind that he was going to be okay and that he was going to heal from everything. My dad like asked me if I wanted to go get high, and so I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. And so we went to his car, got a little high, we were listening to music, and then my dad told me that this was going to be Mark's last night, and that he wasn't going to wake back up. And I was just frozen there, almost emotionless, high, and I was like, oh, well, we should go back in. And he was like, okay. So we did. I went back in, started crying, hugging him, and just trying to be there. He was unresponsive, but I could just hear him breathing. It was almost like a snore, but it was really gravelly. Like, he couldn't breathe very well because of the fluid, and it was getting worse and worse. And I was just crying and playing just playing like some music that he would play for me when he would take me to school and stuff as a kid, which I don't have a lot of because I feel like I didn't get to know him. I don't know, we had a weird relationship towards the end because of complicated stuff that I don't want to get into, but I loved him. And at one point, I had to talk to my friend, and I just told him the whole situation about how he's not going to wake up, and that I was devastated and was crying, and went out in the hall, and there was this guy there, and I was crying really hard, and he was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, not really. My basically like father, in a way, like other dad, is dying. Then he wasn't going to wake up. And he told me to stay strong, and oftentimes it's moments that we're in the hospital that we realized that we need to cherish our loved ones more closely. And gave me some good advice of just living every day like it may be your last. I headed back into the hospital room and was crying, hugging him, and holding his hand. He still was unresponsive, and he was like almost snoring, it sounded like. And at one point, my dad was like, I gotta go call my girlfriend. And so he got on the phone and left the room. It felt like the moment he left the room, Mark was like, oh, well, we have alone time, and he opened his eyes, and he looked at me. And I said hi, and I wasn't sure if he was responsive or not, so I was like, blink twice if you can hear me, and he slowly but surely blinked twice, and I was telling him I loved him, and And I thought he was a great uncle. Best uncle in the world. And told him at any point if he wanted he could go. Pass. And I just hugged him and cried. Said I cared about him. At one point it sounded like he cried. It also sounded like he tried to say my name, but he couldn't like finish it. He said like half of it as he was looking at me. And I just held him. I hugged him. And his breath started to slow. His breath started to slow. There would be more pauses in between. Longer pauses. Until finally, he took his last breath. But just still hugged him. I called the nurses and said that I thought he stopped breathing. They came in and they looked at him and stuff and recorded the time of death. 10:30. March 10th. And I was happy, but sad, very sad. I was happy because he wasn't alone. That I got to be with him during the final moments. But it was also scary because not only do I not know what's after death, but I don't know, it just felt like I had just like kind of got to reconnect. And the whole time he was worried about me and he was just saying stuff like he couldn't wait to maybe move in with me and live with me for a little longer. And he kept saying stuff like, I wish I could buy you a really big house and just keep you safe. And he just cared about me so much. He was given this teddy bear, I think, around the time he was in the hospital. At one point, I was holding my phone and kind of just messing around with it. It had like a strap on it with this teddy bear on it. This teddy bear charm and a bunch of beads. It broke and it went all across the floor. And I remember picking it up and he was kind of like laughing. He was like, what just happened? I was like, my phone strap just broke. This was way before it was getting bad, but... And then I found, like, the teddy bear again, and I was like, do you want it? And he was like, oh, I would love to. And, like, he held on to it, and I was like, do you want me to put it on your table? And he was like, yeah. And then he had his brother make this little necklace out of it. And put it on his teddy bear. I don't know if you see it. The teddy bear still kind of smells like him. I got this I got a couple blankets. I tried to see if I could get other things of him to remember him by, but his mom has been a little bit hard to work with and not really responding to me and just being kind of rude. And she took most of his belongings, if not all of them, and took his phone, took his glasses, took everything, and I just felt like I didn't have much to remember him by, or just items that I could, like, have to, I don't know. She just left me with stuff that people had given him. Belongings that she didn't care about. They didn't hold meaning for her. I don't know. It feels like she's been very selfish throughout this whole thing. Like, he was my dad. Or even times, I don't know, just like, this is less a thing. But he was getting my pronouns right. And I noticed he would try to correct people and just refer to me as his daughter and stuff. And that felt really nice. And it just felt like we had established a new connection that was, like, a lot better than it had ever been. And I'm really sad that he's gone. I don't know. Yeah.